Well, a California college student injured in the shooting has filed the first lawsuit. Paige Gasper's suit claims MGM, the owners of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, also the concert promoter Live Nation and bump stock manufacturers are all liable.
It specifically accuses MGM of failing to respond in a timely manner. She says Live Nation failed to build and mark emergency exits and train staff for emergencies, and names Slide Fire Solutions for making bump stocks that allowed the gunman to fire his rifles like automatic weapons.
Brian Claypool joins us now. He was at the concert when all the shooting started. Also a friend of the show, criminal attorney, and often guest here. Yeah. Glad you're here, brother. That's good.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Still regrouping. Not feeling real social.
You're not yourself.
Important to be here, though. You guys have been great. The show's been great. But this has had a dramatic effect on me. And imagine, I'm a survivor. But I wasn't. I wasn't somebody that was killed. So imagine the grief they're going through, those families.
And look, we want you to. Obviously, someone who was there, who went through all of this, and also someone who was a lawyer. So now we're going to talk about these lawsuits, okay? So we just heard from Scott McLean. They're saying that basically, there is no fall guy for this. That doesn't. I mean, is that the case? I mean, who gets blamed?
Who said that? Scott McLean.
Well, apparently the sheriff.
Yeah. Well, I was being facetious. I'd like to have coffee with him, and I'll tell him there's clearly a fall guy in this because I stayed at the Mandalay Bay. I was there Saturday and Sunday. And I'd like to talk. Ask yourself, why is Mandalay Bay not even given a statement? I was there on Monday, the day after the shooting. I went back to get my belongings in my room. Do you realize that there was not a single sign anywhere? Hey, we're sorry about this shooting.
So you say no one from Mandalay Bay has contacted you?
Nobody at Mandalay Bay either left a note, contacted me, said, hey, we're really sorry about the shooting, number one. Number two, why wasn't that casino shut down? That's a crime scene. I walked in, I can't tell you how upset I was, John, when I walked back there after not sleeping for 48 hours to get my gear, and I see people playing the slot machines. That whole casino should have been shut down for days, and they should have canvassed every hallway, every room for prints, for surveillance video, and shut that place down. Are they more worried about making money the day after a shooting than taking care of people that were killed and injured?
You have a specific take on this in terms of something that would feed into a lawsuit. You say that there are too many corners cut for the likes of Stephen Paddock, these high rollers, which create the gaps that can be exploited by people who want to cause this kind of trouble.
Yeah, look at the culture that we're finding out about how casinos like the Mandalay Bay treat these high rollers. I heard that he had signed in under a different name, possibly his girlfriend's name, was using her name to gamble. He was allegedly allowed to use a service freight elevator. How about that? I mean, did anybody who let him use the service elevator notice he might have been carrying something odd in the service elevator? That should have never happened. And I think one of the biggest problems I see in terms of potential liability for the Mandalay Bay and MGM is this: if this timeline, the revised timeline, is correct, where the security guy's up there at 9:59 and the shooting doesn't start till 10:08, I beg to differ with that guy. There's clearly a fall guy. Every second would have counted. The minute he calls down there, hey, I heard there's shots fired. Why wasn't there somebody up there in a couple minutes? That 9-minute window, Aisha, was the difference between life and death for 59 people.
Okay, well, part of this lawsuit against MGM Resorts from this college student, it states that MGM Resorts should have known their failure to keep their premises reasonably safe would result in catastrophic injury perpetrated by a gun-toting guest with an extreme intention to harm others. So essentially, you're arguing, this is what they're arguing. But in the past, haven't these sort of lawsuits been thrown out of court when they've tried to take the blame away from the gunman and put it onto a third party? What's been the history here?
Well, that has been the case, but I think this case is a little different because you have two components that are distinct in this case. One is you have a guy that planned this for days. It'd be a different story if he showed up at the Mandalay Bay 4 hours before the shooting and then he does a shooting. Then there's a problem.
Reasonable expectation of...
Exactly. Is it reasonably foreseeable that somebody would do this? Now, John, you got to bear in mind that we live in a different world. A lot of violence. Vegas is a hot spot for potential terrorism. You've got a venue. I looked out the room and I saw the venue from my room. So I'm not saying that Mandalay Bay and MGM are supposed to predict there's a sniper that's going to be in the room. But when you've got a 3-day time period with this guy, hauling up, our arsenal into his room, and nobody's going into that room to check for 3 days, That's a problem. You've got to be looking
What's
for
the
red
reasonable
flags.
expectation here of what you can expect from security and from an organization?
The legal suit aside, Brian, I know that you are very engaged with just a response to this and making sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. You're working with other survivors. You saw California Senator Dianne Feinstein a couple of days ago. Talk to me about your steps going forward in terms of responding to this and helping others.
Thank you for asking, by the way. I received hundreds and hundreds of emails from people across the country and this world who were telling me how sorry they felt for my grief when I was interviewed about the shooting. But more importantly, at the end of a lot of those emails, they said, well, you now have a mission. What's your mission? Are you going to do something about gun control? And I felt from a spiritual standpoint that God had anointed me to do something about this. And we have an incredible mayor in Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. He reached out to me after the shooting and to ask how I was doing. I sent him a note back and I said, you know what, dude? I need to meet the woman who's authored this bump stock bill, Dianne Feinstein. And there was an event yesterday where she announced her re-election for the U.S. Senate. And I brought with me, real quick, I brought a note from my daughter. This was a birthday. Now, my birthday was the Tuesday after the shooting. My daughter wrote me a note. She didn't know about the shooting. I read this to Senator Feinstein. I looked her in the face. And real quick, if I may, real quick. Yeah, my daughter writes me a note. Daddy, you've been there my whole life. We've had many great memories together, such as going to the Mid-State Fair, seeing Broadway musicals in New York, seeing Demi Lovato and Ariana Grande. And she says, I love these times together, and I can't wait to make more memories together throughout my entire life. I read this to Dianne Feinstein. I said, you know what, Senator Feinstein? I almost was not able to fulfill my daughter's birthday wish because of a lunatic shooter with an automatic weapon or using these bump stocks. I wanted her to see it in my face. She promised me that she would get this bump stock bill passed in Congress.
Brian, we are out of time. We're glad you're here. We wish you luck. We will stay in touch.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, that bump stock thing could just be the start rather than the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a starting point.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Brian,
I'm glad you're,
take care of
with
yourself.
us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Rooting for
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
We'll take a short break.